we have prepared this because actually we like to have a chat. We like to meet with each other, talk about things. And we had, Tuesday morning, we had our last meeting, and then we said, oh, we'll meet each other in between, and we will prepare with each other. What have we learned so we can use this today, but we haven't prepared. So what we've learned, this is new for us as well. So we'll see what will happen. So, but teaching media literacy, what works? That's the question that we are supposed to
We're going to answer it. And I think one of the things that we have to acknowledge right away is we're talking about teaching, we're talking about what works, and we're talking about the reality that media literacy education is a moving target. It doesn't mean the same in 2024 as it did in 2020, as it did in 2015. And we're all here together to talk about media literacy because it's so dynamic, it's so changing.
Absolutely. So today, algorithmic literacy is part of media literacy, for example, but something happened over there and on the screen. So things have changed. We need some technical help for. Okay,
there we go.
There it is again. We have some, but we know that.
Let's talk about us.
We know that something is working. This is working. As I said, we like to talk about what we're doing. We also have we talk about personal things as well, but a lot of our work. And this is 2018, I guess. This is a kickoff meeting of a project we've done together.
And you look like you're having a really good time.
I am. And you look like you are not sure if I'm saying...
You're not.
Yeah, you're not sure if I'm saying something reasonable or not. And we could ask Nicolata, who was there. We could ask Igor, who was there. We could ask Eva, who was there as well. But this is us talking about the things we've done, the things we've created, the things we've experimented with.
And one thing I learned, and it's right there in that photo, is that what makes you such a special media literacy educator is that you are paying attention to how students live with and about media, and you're close to them in ways that affect the way you teach media literacy. And I find that to be a really important characteristic of a media literacy teacher.
Okay, thank you, Madam. So I learned a lot from you as well. So I remember this was the kickoff meeting of a project about propaganda. And I remember that the first time I heard you talking about was like, okay, propaganda is not only about analyzing what it is, analyzing the visuals, but also propaganda is about emotions, and that was something quite new for me. So talking about emotions is something that needs to be part of media literacy education. So that is something that we've learned, or at least that I've learned. But actually, we're not here to talk about us. Actually,
we're here to talk about us.
Yeah, we're here to talk about us as part of the community, and actually. This is the third day of this conference, and I've seen that it's working quite well. We're exchanging ideas, we're exchanging not only... Because the problem is we have 20-minute session or 20-minute presentations, so we hear, the good things, but what I've seen in coffee breaks, at dinner last night, that people are exchanging a bit further, and that is definitely important. We are members of that global learning community, so definitely something that's the thing, exchanging within that community, that's something that's worked. But there is something, of course, that not everything is working. We are used to have discussions, dialogue, but we see that teachers in general, well, they are afraid of dialogue and discussion. They are not using dialogue and discussion that often.
One of the things when we started talking about the teachers that we work with and our practice is we observed that dialogue and discussion is a core pedagogy of media literacy education. And when you walk into a classroom, what you ultimately want to see is students doing 70% of the talking and teacher doing 30% of the talking. That is a rich dialogic space for co-learning. But when we walk into actual high schools and middle schools and colleges,
probably is the other way around, right?
That's it. We see teachers doing 70% of the talking. And we think that when we're thinking about teaching media literacy and what works, we know dialogue and discussion works, but we know that for lots of complicated reasons, teachers are fearful of student voice sometimes.
In Flemish, or in Dutch, we have word handelingsverlegenheid. I'm not going to
and it means
to translate, but it means the shyness of acting, and that's it. But actually, I do understand why there is some shyness, but because, well, probably this is the more extreme example, but this is what we're seeing right here is Samuel Paty. Samuel Paty is a French teacher, and he said, well, I want to have a discussion on freedom of expression in my classroom. And he thought, okay, what could I use? He wanted to use authentic material because that's what he thought probably was a good idea. So he took the cartoon, he used cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in his class without realizing that images of the Prophet Muhammad are not a common thing for Muslim kids. So some of the kids in his class, she talked to her parents about it. The parents got angry, and
one thing led to another, and he was killed.
And he was killed. So, okay, this is an extreme example, but we know that there is that shyness of acting. There is a bit of fear because if you are using authentic material, you feel that there is a need to talk about propaganda, and you want to use authentic material, but you could miss, and I've seen it. Using material about immigrants can create polarized discussion in the classroom.
Correct.
And that's not that easy.
Correct.
Even cyberbullying incidents can, if you talk about cyberbullying, that could cause like a heated discussion, and maybe you don't want that as a teacher.
That's right. And one of the things we recognized when we were thinking about this topic is how little we know about, from a research point of view, about how and why teachers choose materials, media artifacts for use in the classroom. How and why do teachers choose materials to use? Why do they choose them? And why don't we have a research literature that gives guidance to teachers on the appropriate choices of media artifacts in the classroom? About a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I was in Texas. And I was talking to college teachers who are teaching media literacy, and one of them said to me, Renee, I had this assignment. It involved reading an article from the New York Times, and they were going to do this, that, and the other thing.
Seems reasonable.
And an undergraduate student came up to the instructor and said, I am not going to read that New York Times article. I'm not going to read it because it's liberal propaganda. And in the moment, the teacher was flummoxed. She was flabbergasted. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to say. In her mind, she was angry. She was confused. She didn't respect the student, and it had hurt her that she felt that disrespect, and she felt disrespected. The student said, I would rather take a 0 for the assignment than read the liberal propaganda. And I found myself thinking, what guidance do we offer that teacher? How could she have handled it? And we came up with we co-constructed the solution. Only through dialogue and discussion could that issue have been addressed productively.
Some of my colleagues, they know that I am talking a lot. We need some more conversations. We need conversation skills because we see that teachers don't have those. Some of them have, and some are very good at it, but some don't know how to have conversations because they don't know which conversation type do they need.
And they're used to doing all the talking because that's what teachers do.
So if they want to have a conversation in their classroom, is it a discussion? Is it a discussion where people are
arguing with each other?
Just arguing, and one is saying something and the other is responding.
I disagree with you.
And just it's like, okay, I say this, you say that. As you said, disagreeing with each other, just it's like a fight with words. And that's interesting, but maybe that's not the real solution. So sometimes it's like, okay, we should have more debates in class. But
then I'll be the winner, Bert. Come on, you know.
That's the problem. Debating is like it's a match. So who will win? That's the problem. So probably
that's not it either.
So for me, the type of conversation is the dialogue. And as you can see here in the picture, these are two people talking to each other.
They're listening to each other.
They're trying to understand. And that is the way, the type of conversation we need, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, that's why we want to invite us as a knowledge community to think more about active listening. Active listening is a part of media literacy education, and it's really an under-theorized part of media literacy education. And pedagogically, we need support to help students learn how to listen and to help us learn how to listen. Another problem.
Definitely, that is. But there are some other gaps in media literacy education and in teaching. And there are a lot. This is not a complete list. We only got 20 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we turn to our second topic.
Yeah.
And that is something that other panel members have recognized, right? The way in which the fear that we feel when the discussions about credibility and the discussions about what's accurate and inaccurate, what can you believe, when that swamps the media literacy field, and it feels like that's the only domain that can be addressed. So that's been frustrating to us because we've seen so much funding go toward a focus on this important, but maybe not the only relevant domain for media literacy educators.
Indeed, but in media-wise, as Martina said, I have been doing a lot of workshops on propaganda, on information, disinformation. So actually, to be honest,
it's your business.
It is my business. So, but the thing is, when I'm talking to teachers, they prefer this, and this is a picture of somebody reading my newspaper. This is the newspaper, De Morgen, the one I read since I was 14. So it's called a quality newspaper here in Flanders. But teachers, they like it because it is a quality newspaper. So they prefer it as...
It's the New York Times of Belgium?
Kind of. But, yeah. No, maybe not the same standards, but good enough. But it's like, okay, they want to promote this and not like a more simple newspaper. Right. But that doesn't matter that much. But the focus they have is...
on the news.
Yeah, the news, the text. So there's a lot of text analysis. There is a lot of comparison. But let's face it, that's not a thing that we see first. The first thing we see is this. Mostly, it's the pictures.
Picture.
The pictures. Pictures tell more than 1,000 words, right? So, and that doesn't get any attention. But even that, let's be honest, nowadays, there are not a lot of young people reading newspapers nowadays. At least, definitely not on paper. If I ask a student, where do you know something about, let's say, climate? Where do they get it, Renee? Where do they get it?
So from social media.
Social media. They got it from TikTok. They got it from some memes. And this is one, in a workshop with young people, we're talking about all the climate debate, and then they came up with this.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to unpack memes and how rhetorically complex memes are. So Bert, when you see this meme, how does it make you feel? What feeling words can you identify that you're feeling right now when you see this meme?
Well, to be honest, this is not the first time I've seen this meme, but I know that the first time I felt a bit angry and maybe also a bit frustrated because, well, you see Greta Thunberg on top, who's repeating something that she said. You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And then there is a completely unrelated picture of 3 young boys working, digging.
So I am fascinated about this. It seems like it's a form of critique of the environmental movement, or maybe of Greta Thunberg personally. It seems to trivialize her environmentalism, or maybe to accuse her of certain kind of white privilege, or a certain kind of obliviousness to the problem of child labor. So perhaps this is a cultural commentary, but boy, there's a lot of ambiguity involved. And I realize that for me to interpret it, I have to bring my knowledge of child labor, of environmentalism, of the fact that, you know, she made that speech. She said that not on her boat,
no,
right? She said that in a speech before, like, the UN or something, right? So I have to bring all kinds of background knowledge to the task of reading this text.
Yeah, but that's a problem, because memes are supposed to make us laugh, and it's something that is, okay, you see it, and then you say,
Swipe.
okay, like, swipe.
Swipe.
So doing this exercise is a very interesting thing, and actually it's a very fun thing to do with teachers and with students, because they have to find context, they have to find new meanings, and they have to discuss with each other.
In explaining what you think it means, you reveal your identity.
Yes.
You reveal your knowledge. And then I get to learn that I can learn from you, even though what you know about this is really different than what I know.
That's true. And this shows that it's not a black and white exercise. And a lot of teachers, they like, as Patrick mentions, they like to say, is it true or is it fake? And I know, I showed this a few months ago to a group of teachers, and they were like, yeah, but this is not true, you see, because that speech was not given on that boat. So, and I think even the lower photograph is photoshopped. But that's not what it's about.
Right question.
If we are dealing with this kind of information online, it's not about is it true or is it false.
So as teachers, we want to focus on the meaning-making process as we understand, interpret, and reflect on the power of symbols. And we also want to talk about the changing nature of authority, right? So one of the things we observe is how hierarchies establish fact checkers as the experts, Bert. They're at the top, right?
And
then
they are part of the things we need to do.
The expert network is important. But as we are seeing in our culture right now, people have a lot of ways to assess credibility. And expertise is one kind of credibility, but the authenticity of influencers is another kind of credibility. And instead of trivialize that and dismiss that and consider that somehow lesser than expert authority, we need to actually open up space in the classroom to talk about the power of authenticity as a form of credibility.
And is that the expertise when we're talking about influencers, when we're talking about memes, is not with us. We are, let's face it, a bit old. So we need to have our students to be the experts. And one of the fun things I do is, when I'm discussing news items, I ask my students, I ask the students, maybe can you rank, I give them 5 articles or videos about the same topic, and I say, okay, rank these. Which one is more credible and which is less credible? And without giving them checklists beforehand. And to be honest, I am just like, my job is observing and guiding a bit without being the expert, but in reality they are experts as well. So that is, we need to acknowledge the expertise of the young people, and so our role has changed.
So through dialogue and discussion, you empower your students to figure out for themselves what counts as knowledge. And your observation and reflection and guidance, that's actually creating the kind of learning environment that empowers students as critical thinkers.
Absolutely. So it is, good media literacy is not about providing knowledge only. It's not about giving checklists, providing checklists. It's definitely something about co-learning.
It's not about delivering the truth.
It's not about delivering. We are not part of the Ministry of Truth, if that sexist in any kind of way. But we are facilitators, we are good listeners, active listeners, and we try to make our students good listeners, good conversationists as well.
That's right. That's why we think that here at this conference and all throughout your work as leaders in media literacy education, we invite you to share stories and create spaces for educators and students to share stories, because we think that sharing stories about the practice of media literacy education helps to advance the field. Thank you very much.
Thank you.